Welcome to episode 282 of the Alamo Audible Podcast, brought to you by the Dave Campbell Texas Football Republican Football Podcast Network. The Roadrunners are back in the win column with a very surprising yet impressive 61-13 victory over the Rice Owls. UTSA restores order in the universe, takes back physical control of this series, and just manhandle the Owls. No other way to put it.
Unbelievable day for UTSA, Jared. It's starting to become a tale as old as time, right? Whenever we think all hope is lost for Jeff Traylor and his UTSA Roadrunners, they pull off the miraculous and just turn into a team that is capable of 61 points, a 60 burger, if you will, the first one in school history, and a 3-record day for the Roadrunners. Points scored, defensive scores, which there were 3 of them, 2 touchdowns and a safety, amassing 16 total defensive points. And another school record for tackles for loss, 17 on the day over the Rice Owls. Granted, UTSA was playing at a different speed and with a different ferocity, particularly on defense, and this is something that you hear highlighted from Jeff Traylor and from everyone else that's kind of talked about the game so far, but they were playing with a different aggression. And I don't know, maybe there was just a lot of pent-up frustration, demons being exercised, as Jared here was describing to me the morning after the game. And I think that's absolutely right. You saw a pissed-off UTSA team play pissed-off football really for the first time so far this year. They let it all loose, and everything was clicking for this team and coming together for this team. They dominated. They absolutely dominated in a way offensively that not only had we not seen all year long, but explosively. We hadn't seen the explosive play from UTSA offense. They gave it to us all day long, all night long from Rice. 4 quarters of explosive plays.
I'm amazed at the 16 points of defensive scoring for UTSA compared to 13 points of offense from Rice. Like, I'm sure there have been times where the defenses outscored the offense in a shutout against an FCS opponent or something like that. But outscore a FBS opponent that had a 500 record in the middle of the season coming into this game is a massive accomplishment for sure. And, I think UTSA just teed up on them, right? They had a bad taste in their mouth, not only after the loss at Temple, but I think also dating back to last year. We heard Jeff Traylor mention it several times in press conferences after the game that, they really looked back at that Rice loss last year as one that they should have had. And Adrian, we were both at that game. It was an emotional roller coaster of, UTSA playing really poorly, and then the offense comes alive, and, Owen leads this 2-minute drill to score with a minute and a half left, and you think the game's over. A couple penalties, then you give up the game-losing touchdown to a player who I think was laying on his back when he caught the football.
Implosion, just an implosion. Yeah,
and the brawl after the game too. I mean, it was just a mess of a game.
Ugly scene.
A crazy sequence of events there. So good that it was fresh on UTSA's mind, and maybe we should have talked about that more in a game preview. That some of those emotions might come through in this one, and they certainly did. I mean, anytime that you knock 3 quarterbacks out of the game with hard hits. Says a lot about the level of physicality that you're playing at. And I think, Rice being an option team now, it just unlocked UTSA's linebackers to just go heat-seeking missile mode and, fly through with reckless abandon and, knock some goals around.
Right. That's a great point, Jared. It was the wrong place, the wrong time for the Rice Owls, but particularly the style of football they play really left their quarterbacks vulnerable to a team that so much frustration was just foaming at the mouth, right? Chomping at the bit to really just let loose. And this game happens to be at home in the Alamo Dome. And UTSA has that advantage going for them. But for them to turn it all around on the 1 week turnaround is still, just unprecedented. Even despite, knocking out Rice's starting quarterback relatively early in the game and then getting to a second string and a third string, ultimately a fourth string. The way that the offense played and scoring 61 points despite those scenarios, I think is still just very unprecedented, Jared. What was the magic behind UTSA's ability to score the football, for the offense to be so explosive when we had not seen it for 5 straight football games all season for UTSA, minus Robert Henry's big explosive 75-yard runs downfield. We had not seen any explosive plays through the air and through the passing game, and we saw a whole lot of them. What did you think was the magic behind UTSA's offense?
I don't think there was one like silver bullet per se of like, they change this one thing and it unlocks the whole offense. But I think it was a combination, right? A willingness and an ability to execute downfield, right? The second play of the game, they hit AJ Wilson deep, like 57 yards. And AJ got wide open, right? Really easy post route for him, and kind of 1-on-1 matchup against a quarterback that was outmatched. And then Owen doesn't deliver a perfect strike, but enough in stride to where AJ can keep running and pick up a lot of yardage. And then I think also some of the return of those injured receivers probably helped as well. We saw Jamil Hardy back on the field; he had a couple of catches, but I was really impressed with DJ Allen. He had one play where Owen rolled out of the pocket to his left, and there wasn't anything there really initially. DJ kind of worked back towards him, trying to find that open space in the zone like you're supposed to against zone coverage. It ended up being a pretty short pass from Owen, maybe 10 yards, 15 yards, something like that. DJ just took it and took off, and he just outran the whole Rice defense, and it was very impressive. You can tell his home run ability, his ability to quickly accelerate is something this offense is missing. You hope that opens up opportunities for the rest of the receivers, the rest of the offense. And I think that success in the passing game also opened things up for Will Henderson and Robert Henry as well. Like, you didn't see Rice load the box quite as much as we saw Colorado State and Temple do. So I just think it's a better balance. I think the execution was better. I thought Owen looked a lot more comfortable. I thought they put him in the right situations to succeed. You saw them roll him out of the pocket to his throwing side a lot.
Yes.
I noticed a lot less RPOs. I don't know if Owen threw one RPO and that whole first half that he played, but there was a lot of play action. And he just looked really comfortable back there, dicing it out and letting plays develop and, doing a great job of extending plays and, making something out of nothing in some cases.
Yeah, it certainly was reminiscent of the Owen that we have grown fond of through 2024. And he really does look exceptionally well and starkly different when he's throwing on the move. And I think that was my main takeaway from Owen's game and maybe the offensive play altogether, was that he was rolling out all the time and throwing on the move, and he just threw the ball beautifully. It was much more accurate and much tighter than he had been all season long so far. I mean, really threaded the needle well on a few plays. And that was because of the mobility. And he's got a great way of sort of finessing outside of the pocket and extending and finding guys that may not be open and helping them get open by moving around with it. Like, he's really good at that. He's really good at those sort of impromptu sort of decisions and plays with his feet and arm at the same time. Really impressive stuff from Owen when he's doing that, and I think it compounds. Owen playing well, finding the receivers, finding a few guys, right? I mean, AJ Wilson, Devin McEwen, and DJ Allen all go for over 50 yards receiving. And you compound that Owens play, the wide receiver play, and then that with how ferocious the defense was. Everything was really firing. But it was a game of just explosive plays from UTSA's offense, from UTSA's defense too, sort of in that same breath. It was a day of explosive plays for UTSA altogether. And that's what happens. I mean, you get all these big explosive plays, and they start happening and accumulating earlier in the football game for UTSA. And it sort of rips Rice's soul out, not to mention losing their starting quarterback and then losing their second string quarterback. And it's just off to the races at that.
Yeah, when you see 61 points on the scoreboard, your initial reaction is, oh my God, that offense went crazy. They must have been scoring every single play. And there's truth to that. But I think the play of the defense played a huge part. Obviously, they pitched in 16 points of their own, right? So right off the bat, you've got a good chunk right there of defensive output. But the way they were able to just, bludgeon and punish the Rice offense, right? Gave really good field position to the Roadrunners. And, I think them just giving such a walloping just gave the offense a lot of confidence that they could take some shots downfield and not feel like they needed to extend and do these methodical drives and all of that because they're like, the defense has us handled, right? They were clearly outclassing Rice, And so, you did have to have that same approach of caution that you typically would against an option team, where you're like, all right, let's make sure the defense has some time to get a breath. They were just literally knocking dudes' heads off out there.
Whenever you consider how well this team played offensively and defensively, but then you consider Rice eventually working down to a fourth string quarterback. Rice, being a 500 team coming into this, certainly not the top brass of the American Conference. How much does fan read into a 60 burger over such a big win, over turning it around in this 1 week? How much confidence can that give you going forward as you really enter a gauntlet here against a UNT, a Tulane, and a USF 3 games in a row?
When you ask about the fans, are you just talking about like casual, typical fan?
I mean viewers. I mean you. I mean viewers. I mean just people. I just mean in general, right? How can you feel? How should you feel about 60 burger against a Rice team that you knocked their
That's the
quarterback
big question, right? I mean, and the truth is, like, UTSA is not this good that they're going to have a lot of like 61 to 13 wins throughout the rest of the season, right? But they also probably were not as bad as the loss to Temple. And Jeff Traylor says it all the time, like, it's never as good as you think, super bad as you think, whatever. But I think the hope is like you can just kind of parlay this, right? You've got, the roster's pretty healthy. Hopefully it's a sign that you're starting to play your best football down the stretch, which we always expect from a Jeff Traylor team. Historically, they've always done that. But also, maybe Rice was pretty bad, right? And maybe this is, false hope, fool's gold, maybe. We'll have to wait and see. It's a huge jump up in competition with North Texas this week. Obviously, we'll get into all of that. But for me, as impressive as that win was, and, there's like really nothing you can nitpick. They played pretty much perfect. Given the track record of what they put on film the first, 5 games of the season or whatever, I didn't see enough for me to be like, okay, this team's not going to go make a run at competing for the conference championship or something like that. You got to see them do it against, equal or better talent, which has been a problem for them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well said, Jared. I think it is in fact true that this game is the absolute best result that you could have had in this game. And it's the most confidence, it's the best that you could possibly feel going into this 3-game run that you're about to have in your regular season. To go and put a 60 burger up against a Rice. But I still think, yeah, you've got to proceed. Your optimism has to proceed with caution until we see how UTSA shakes out against the team in Denton, the Mean Green, the real rivalry, right? So, and that's not to take away from the recap against Rice, right? I think we still have more stuff to touch on about that, but I think there's something to be said that it's important that we sort of keep our emotions in check as we come off of this 60-point game, and that's sort of the emotion that I got from Jeff Traylor as I watched him in his Monday media roundtable and his post-game presser just after, probably what was a very ecstatic locker room. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe everybody was still pretty serious. Maybe everyone was just sort of humbled with themselves, because that's what I got from Jeff Traylor in the post-game presser, that he was, not really like gloating or showboating. He just sort of was, yeah, look, I told you this team was improving. We're improving. We're playing better. It seemed like he was kind of humbled even after the win. So I don't know. It's sort of hard to gauge right now, but I think he also feels as though they have a lot to prove besides a 60 burger against Rice.
Yeah, and I was a little concerned about that. I think I actually texted you Saturday night because I didn't get a chance to watch the post game that night, because I saw the quote of like, we're 21-0 in conference games at home, and you guys want to fire Burke and fire Lepp and fire Owen or whatever. And I got super concerned. I'm like, dude, you haven't done anything yet. Like, hold your horses. But that was just like one quote taken outside of the context of the full interview. And I agree. I mean, I very much got the sense that, like, there's nothing to rest on our laurels about. We have underperformed this year. We know we've underperformed. We still got a long way to go for us to play at the level that we all think that this team is capable of doing. But again, we saw the proof of concept last week that this team is very talented. They can be one of the best offenses in the country. The building blocks are there. Just execute, play clean, get the ball to players in space, play with aggression on defense. Anything can happen.
That simple, right, Jared? Yeah, I think it's fair for Jeff Traylor to answer that particular question the way that he did. 21-0, 23-0 if you include the championship games in conference matchups at home is ridiculous. It's a
Crazy
ridiculous
impressive,
stat.
man.
And if
Crazy.
you're gonna put 60 points up on the scoreboard, are you allowed to silence your critics in the aftermath of a 60 burger? I think so. I think the Roadrunners have earned that. I think Jeff Traylor has earned that. Everyone's got to be quiet until we play Denton, at least, right? So
Sure.
for this week, everyone does sort of need to be quiet after they put up a 60 burger. However,
Adrian,
it does.
let me interrupt you real quick before we move to the next topic. It is very telling we did not get a single voicemail on the Alamo Audible hotline after the game. We got one.
Because Jared, because be, doing this to Rice and scoring 60 against Rice and dominating Rice, holding them to 13 total points, only goes to show you that you had no business losing against Temple, that you had no business getting bloopered into a win over CSU. You had no business losing by one possession to Texas State. Right.
Texas State's kind of looking like a bad loss right now. Did you see what happened to
So
them last
yeah,
weekend?
so I mean it's clear now, like, team should be starting much better. And so fans, yeah, they're not banging the drum rah because of the 60 burger. They're just quiet because you're like, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Where's this been? Where's it
Right.
been? So I don't know. I think that's fair too. I think it's fair
Sure.
to demand for this to show up a little bit earlier for a staff with this much tenure as they have together.
Well, looking through my notes here, some things I wanted to make sure that we hit on. I thought the special teams greatly improved. By far the best special teams showing of the season for the Roadrunners. Granted, it's the game where you need them the least, so it takes a little pressure off their back. But I thought Jaafir Murphy was much better on kickoffs. He was getting them into and out of the end zone consistently. They didn't allow a positive kickoff return. I think they had one negative one that they reeled in. Punting was great. Cale Hogan pinned them on like the 1 or 2 yard line, which turned into a safety for the defense. I think John Jones was the one that bust through to get that one. And then they had 1 or 2 really good punt returns. Elliot Brown did muff one, but
Yes.
they were thankfully able to recover it. That was a really bad decision. He came forward like 30, 40 yards. If it's a shank like that, you just got to let it roll, and let it lie where it lies. But he's learning. He's getting better. And then, of course, Michael Petro hits a career long. Was it 45 or 47?
45 yards.
Yeah, 45 yards. But I mean, he had the leg for probably a 50-yarder. It was a very nice kick.
Very nice kick. Had plenty of leg. 83% on the year. Michael Petro, who has just been pretty good, pretty reliable. I think it's fair to say he's 5 for 6 on the year. He's got, in addition to the 45-yarder, he's got a 40-yarder against CSU. He's got a 31-yarder against UIW. He's got a 36-yarder against A&M and Kyle Field. Okay, the first kick that he made as a road runner. And so he's been actually really reliable so far. And he looks good kicking the ball so far for a team that had absolutely no idea who was going to be their field.
That's a good point that I hadn't considered. Of all the improvement or potential improvement that we could see from this team in the second half of the season, having a lot of reliability from your kicker when it's not been there, whether he was missing them in practice or just the coaching staff didn't feel confident in him. Getting that asset on your team for this back half of the season could be a big difference, especially what should be some pretty competitive and close games against a very tough schedule for the Roadrunners.
Right. Yeah. So, Jared, we saw a big day. We kind of talked about the big days that were had on offense, on defense. But one name that we haven't touched on yet is Will Henderson. 5 carries, 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. He has 2 really long ones, one for 57 yards downfield. But just an unbelievable day. We talked about explosive plays. He had some enormous ones on the ground. Willie Henderson.
Yeah, he had a few against Temple. You could tell he was really close to breaking it. I mean,
Chopping
just
at the bit.
one bad step from a safety, and he would have been off to the races. So it was good to see him get those. I called it because I saw it was his birthday. I was like, all right, he's going to get his first touchdown of the season on his birthday. They said, let me get 2 of them, actually. Double down birthday special. Very
Nice.
special, very electric player. It's crazy that he's only a retro freshman. Sky's the limit, right? And obviously his speed is the big thing. Both of his touchdowns just kind of outran the defense, but the toughness that he shows running between the tackles is really impressive as well. I mean, I remember last year being on the podcast and we're like, why are they running Will Henderson between the tackles? He's never going to be able to do this. This is dumb. Put him in the slot. Don't put him, in the pistol formation or whatever. But he's really leading to that role and impressive, strong for his lack of size. So just a really fun player to watch.
I guess my big thing is, how do you play? How do you figure out how to play this pissed off and this aggressive and this furious with this tenacity every single week, whether it's at home in the Alamo Dome or on the road? How do you get this level of fire out of the UTSA Roadrunners taking the field on a consistent weekly basis? Because the energy was different this week than it's been all season long prior.
Yeah, that's a great question. Not one we're going to be able to answer, but I think about it a lot.
But I think it's the one thing this team needs to figure out how to do. If they could figure out how to unlock this spirit,
I don't think there were any major schematic changes. I mean, we saw some slight adjustments. Like I said, less RPOs, and the defense didn't really let any receivers run past them. So that was great. But I mean, nothing groundbreaking. It was just like more passion. Guys were playing loose. They're playing free. And playing without fear, I think, is another way that I described it as well. No trepidation. They're very sure in their decision making, and it really showed.
In other weeks, I think there were some sequences where people were a little iffy with the play calling. You bring up the RPO. It looks like the UTSA offensive attack sort of shied away from that a little bit this week. Is that sort of the one major change that you think you noticed watching this offense?
Another thing I noticed, I tweeted this out before the game, that I felt like UTSA's run schemes have gotten pretty vanilla this season. If you think back to when Oscar Cardenas was here, and Leroy Watson as well, they had a lot of creative ways they would utilize the tight end and the H-backs in the run scheme, right? Of like the split zone play where running back goes one way and tight end goes another way, so you kind of throw off the linebacker's eyes, and motioning the tight end and then inserting him between the tackles as a lead blocker and stuff like that. And then, funny enough, that first drive that UTSA has, they run both of those plays that I called out in my pregame tweet. It was kind of spooky. So that was nice to see. And, maybe they have been doing some of that stuff too, but they haven't been successful with it. And so just not as noticeable on film. But it felt like they were opening up the offense a little bit in that regard. And, I think when you're running a lot of RPOs, it's hard to like really complicate things by having the tight end in motion and doing all that. So that might just be a side effect of them, moving away from the RPOs and going to more, traditional runs and traditional play action passes and stuff like that.
There's some sideline staff following the tweets, Jared, you think maybe perhaps?
No, I'm sure they have those. Well, because like those are scripted drives, right? I'm sure they have them done on Thursday.
Of course. Now,
the real
did
question
you think
is like, do I have a mole or not? Right?
did you think that throughout the season prior to the game against Rice, the offense was running RPO a little bit more than they had, say, last year when Owen was starting?
No, I would say less, actually. I mean, the RPOs had been successful for UTSA in the past, but I think maybe a combination of the receivers just not getting open as easily as before,
Okay.
and maybe just like mental stuff of we're not going through the reads and progressions as well. I don't really know, but I never really had a problem with them running RPOs personally. I know some other fans felt like they didn't execute well on that, which I can see, but no, I don't know.
It did seem like they ran more play action than they had prior this year, and that is something that Owen shined in, as we kind of talked about earlier.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like there's not a good source of statistics on this. Like you would have to go chart it all, and the only way you can really tell is is the offensive line run blocking or not on a pass play. But if they're run blocking and Owen hands the ball off, you're not going to be able to know that it was an RPO. It's really hard to track and chart this stuff, but from what I was able to tell, it definitely seemed like less RPOs.
Other names that you want to mention, give shout outs to for the
I thought the
Roadrunners?
linebackers were great. I mean, both Kendrick Blackshire and Chad Banks as the starters, both of them got a touchdown, which is super cool. Both of those guys have been working their tails off and playing hard, playing great football. Great culture guys as well, from what we can tell. So to see them get rewarded with that was awesome. They just, they terrorized Rice, man. They were breaking through, and a lot of linebackers they're a little bit intimidated to go against the option because they're usually the ones that it's most obvious they got their assignment wrong, and create those big plays, and they just played with such intensity and a willingness to get after it, right? But after the game got at hand and those guys came out, James Wally came in and got a ton of snaps. And I was very impressed with James Wally. You definitely see a promising future for him if he sticks around and continues to develop. I think he's gotten some tutelage from Blackshire and Banks, who have been around the block a lot. So it was great to see him out there and playing with a lot of speed, playing behind the line of scrimmage. I think he had a fourth down stop for a turnover on downs, and I think he had another tackle for loss as well. I think him and Ty Leonard were the two guys that had 2 tackles for loss, if I remember correctly. So really, really impressive stuff.
Glad you brought up that C word, culture, talking about big culture guys. I think this was more so than anything, Jared, a very good win for the culture of UTSA, that 2-1-0 triangle of toughness. And Jeff Traylor has actually been preaching throughout the sub 500 start through the first 5 games of this year that the culture was strong despite losing the locker room and the practice, and the culture was very, very strong. I think they proved that more than anything else. They proved that there they were, a game underneath 500, playing very poor football just all together in all 3 phases of the game. Hadn't really strung together a good 4 quarters quite yet, a complete 4 quarters by any means. And they're able to do so, and they do it in a big way, the roughest way. They respond. They respond to what we call some hardship, overcoming adversity, as they like to say. I would think that this is qualifies as overcoming adversity in a big way. And for the culture of the 2-1-0 triangle of toughness, the Roadrunners did that this week. So it's a big one. It's a big one as you go into the gauntlet. We got to see it against a better team.
Last shout out I'll give is to the student section. There were 22,000 in attendance, and it was diehards only, exclusively diehards. So it got loud, right? People knew when the big moments were, and they were fired up for the big hits and all of that. But that 22,000 number was heavily carried by the students. They showed up in force. They're still all in on this program. Even after the halftime, UTSA had a big lead. People still stuck around after the homecoming court was introduced and all of that for quite a while, actually. So I was very impressed with them. And you want to talk about culture? I think UTSA is really building a strong student culture for supporting football, even through the ups and downs. So was really happy to see that. And I hope more of the fans return for the Tulane game. It's going to be such a great game.
Well, on that note, Jared, on that note, I think maybe they proved something at the student section, because this is a game, you talk about student section hanging around even after halftime. It's a 6:30 kickoff. It's an evening kickoff, right? So usually those are hard to maintain a crowd in a blowout, especially. Yeah. And they do that on ESPNU. ESPN likes it so much that they decide to flex the Tulane matchup, which is at home in the Alamo Dome in 2 weeks, to the flagship ESPN. That's incredible. It's incredible. We're getting a 4-letter network game. We got that against A&M, a ranked preseason A&M, sure. In Kyle Field, sure. This is ESPN 4-letter network in the Alamo Dome for a conference matchup. Does ESPN know something about these UTSA Roadrunners that we don't, Jared?
No.
This is great.
Shout out to Daryl in the Patreon chat. He made this point. Look, the only other competition to get on ESPN was like Marshall versus Coastal Carolina or something like that. So
yeah.
Let's not go crazy doing backflips here. Coastal Carolina is very, very bad.
Let's be very excited. Let's still be very excited to be on ESPN, and it's a big ass deal on a Thursday night, 6:30. So
my question, my challenge, can you just hit 30K on a Thursday night? I think that's a fair goal to set, 30,000. I guess the performance against North Texas is going to have a lot to do with, if that number is doable or not. But I think the students are going to show up.
I think it's a fair ask.
I think it's doable. Tulane could be ranked. I mean, they've got the name recognition. So,
Jared, We shall see from these Roadrunners this week. Denton, Texas, UNT, the real rivalry, bro. Here we come. But maybe we should get to a Kumbia break before that.
Yeah, of course. Before we do, I want to say a huge thank you to Brandy Dunnigan, who has joined us at the Big Money Donor tier on Patreon. She's a realtor with the Social House Group. We've got her profile linked on our website. So if you're looking to buy a seller home in Bexar County, please be sure to hit her up. And thank you, as always, to our Board of Trustees members, Digi Teak, John Otwell, Gary and Rubin represent the UTSA Burger Tailgate, Ray Redding, Andy Elizad at Professional Benefit Solutions, Ian McClinton at Secret LLC, Javan Townsend, president of the DFW chapter of the UTSA Loan Association. Ooh, my throat's really giving out, man. I'm gonna power through.
You got it. You got
Waterman Construction, UTSA Annual Giving, Brandon Patron, UTSA King Bowser, and Runners United. We go to www.go.utsa.co to support UTSA student athletes. I'm gonna take a big old drink of water. We're gonna come be a break. We're gonna come back and preview the North Texas meeting. All right, guys, welcome back from the Cumbia break. We are here to preview UTSA's, fiercest, most overall competitive historical rivalry in the game of college football. Texas State's been doing their thing the last 2 years. Respect to that. But when you look at the whole series, the Mean Green still haven't beat. UTSA leads the series 8-5 on a current 4-game win streak. Eric Morris has never beaten the UTSA Roadrunners, but this year's the best chance he's had yet, for sure.
Really incredible, Jared, to think that there's an entire class from freshman to senior UTSA Roadrunners graduated and never, ever experienced losing to North Texas. If you got to UTSA fall of 2022 and then you graduated, I'm sorry, 2020, 2022, right? Yeah, I guess you would have experienced one. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, you would have experienced one because UTSA beats UNT, twice in 2022?
Yeah, that was the championship game year.
Yeah, we beat them twice. 2023 and then 2024. Yeah, no, so technically, I guess
they haven't graduated yet.
They haven't graduated yet. Okay, now here we go. Now it's starting to make sense.
We have to win.
The math wasn't mathing. That's why you got to do this sort of thing before you actually start recording the podcast. The math wasn't mathing. So if UTSA can win this year, there will be an entire class of Roadrunners that never experienced defeat to the Mean Green. Hot damn, what a statistic that could be. I don't think there's ever been either side of this matchup had that long of a win streak before.
No, I'm looking at it right now. The UNT had a 3-game streak, 17, 18, and 19. That 19 game was a 45-3 ass whipping that probably got Frank Wilson fired.
That's right, Jared, because prior to 2023, UTSA went nearly 10 years without beating North Texas in the greater or anyone for that matter, not winning a single game in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area for 10 years almost, from 2013 to 2023. UTSA finally got their win in Denton in 2023 with a 1-score win over the Mean Green. And then now they go back to Denton again on what is going to be the beginning of an extremely difficult 3-game stretch for UTSA. You got UNT on the road, where UNT has already been announced a 5-point favorite. And then you've got to go against Tulane at home in the Alamo Dome. And then the most difficult, the last one of the 3, is in Tampa against USF, the South Florida Bulls, who are playing unbelievable football, 2 ranked wins over Florida blue chip powerhouses at that. Like truly an unbelievable season that USF is having right now. So these 3 games is really where the pudding is going to be made. The cream is going to rise to the top for the Roadrunners. I mean, this will decide their fate in 2025.
You got to steal one. I mean, we said it in that post-game reaction podcast we did. As soon as UTSA lost a Temple, that is mean they had to pick up another win somewhere unexpected. And there's 3-game stretches that unexpected period where like all these teams, well, maybe not Tulane. The SP Plus ratings updated this morning, and UTSA is now ahead of Tulane in those. UTSA jumped 16 points. I can't explain that. Don't ask me. It's weird. But logically, for most people, UTSA is going to be an underdog in all 3 of these games. You've got the track record against North Texas. Probably match up okay with them in some phases, but their downfield passing is super deadly, and that's been a problem for UTSA this year. So we'll see, but you got to find a way to win at least one of these, and that's the only way that I think you can have any kind of season that most of the fan base would say is a success based on what the expectations were coming in.
UNT playing pretty good football so far, Jared. 5-1, particularly with a overtime win over Army, where they started much, much better than they finished, but hold on to pull that game out and win it. Their other wins, maybe not like the most impressive. Like, could you argue that UNT is a little bit inflated with their 5-1 record being with wins over Lamar, Western Michigan, which was also in overtime in week 2.
Yeah.
Washington State, maybe. I mean, they blew them out pretty well. South Alabama, but then South Florida really beats up on them. Another 60 burger in the American Conference matchup. South Florida 63 over UNT's 36. But I don't know, Jared. Is UNT's 5 wins a little bit inflated, do you think?
I guess a little bit. I mean, I think for an American school, I mean, this is a solid schedule to claim 5 wins over. Lamar's actually in the hunt to win the Southland this year, so
that's looking.
They're better than we're used to thinking of them as this year. So and Washington State took Ole Miss down to the wire this past week, so it's give or take. I don't think Army's that great. Western Michigan, I don't think is that great. So it's a bit of a mix, but I think you still got to hand it to North Texas. It's been a great season for them. It's just unfortunately the way that the Mean Green often do, like when the lights are the brightest and they have that chance to finally break through and kind of, stick their flag in the ground of, being amongst the best mid-major programs in the country, they fall flat on their face, right? And it's just they can't seem to get out of their own way. And, the ironic thing about that, game against South Florida this past weekend is it was looking pretty good for them. I mean, up until the midway point of the third quarter, it was a back and forth game, and North Texas looked, like they could pull it off. I've never heard that stadium that loud before. I mean, there was a real roar in that crowd, which was awesome.
It's never been that packed before, Jared. It was the largest, the first sellout ever for UNT at the stadium, and the largest crowd they've ever had. And it's 21-21 at halftime. It's a tie game.
Yeah.
And that place is going ballistic. Unfortunately, it just got away from them in the third quarter with 28 straight unanswered points, a barrage from USF. But prior to that, dude, I mean, the place is rocking. The place is rocking.
Yeah, and they were able to force turnovers. I think they had 3 turnovers they forced in the first half or something like that. And in hindsight, maybe that was a problem, is they didn't build enough of a lead off of those turnovers, to really get USF out of the game. But they still look very explosive, right? And I just think that they just didn't keep it together, from a competitive standpoint, mental standpoint. I mean, they definitely had the talent, I think, to go toe-to-toe with them. USF was the better team, for sure, don't get me wrong. But with a home crowd behind them, I would have expected to see a little bit more fight from them down the stretch. There was kind of a funny play where I think there was an interception and like the USF player like was taunting UNT, like backpedaling into the end zone. And the landed sides kind of squared up with him, and I was trying to start a little something.
Yeah,
but USF was feeling themselves, and I don't think UNT was able to match that energy for a full 4 quarters.
When you have the juice playing that well, it just sort of gets that way with that. That's where that dominance just sort of comes out, and they're having that season. But UNT, wow, they are surprisingly really, really good. And it all starts at the biggest surprise of them all. That is Drew Mestmacher at quarterback.
Mestemaker.
Thank you, Jared. Drew Messamaker, redshirt freshman at quarterback who never started a single varsity high school game at the position. In fact, played safety on defense and was a punter. He has been astounding this year. He is completing 2/3 of his passes, 67 completion percentage, over 1,500 yards on the year. 13 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. All 3 of those interceptions came last week against USF. So, I mean, really like a flawless season through the first 5 games of the year. Yeah, for Drew. So, like, really just phenomenal quarterbacking discovery that UNT has made here, that Eric Morris has made here in Drew. And I don't even know he got thrusted into this position for the Mean Green, but he looks fabulous for them so far, and he's like already sort of cemented himself as not just really really good and reliable with the quarterback, but like a captain and a voice and like a leader of the offense. Like he's commanding UNT offensively this season.
The whole thing is crazy. I mean, I really feel like Eric Morris could go pick up like a 14-year-old kid off any like JV program in DFW and find a way to throw for 300 yards a game. I mean, it's ridiculous. And Messermaker is legit, man. He's not just like the system quarterback and he's hitting his checkdowns and stuff like that. Like, he's got a live arm. Some of the throws I've seen him make this year, I'm like, I can't imagine him even thinking to attempt that pass. You know, like it would have to be such a pinpoint, accurate throw between 2 defenders and just like NFL style threading the needle. And he's willing and able to do it. It's very, very impressive. And that did start to catch up with him a little bit against USF, where some of those throws, you know, they disguised the coverage well, and he bit on that. They like, you know, USF was doing something interesting. Sometimes they would like kind of head fake on defense, almost like they were going to turn outside to take an outside zone coverage, and they faked him out and actually, you know, kept the coverage on the inside. So that's a play that he's had a lot of success with. Is kind of like that stick route where like the slot receiver just kind of runs a little bit and then turns it inside. Quick connection, easy pickup. USF defended that really, really, really well. So that's something they put on film that I'm hoping that UTSA can learn from and emulate as well. But it takes talent to be able to pull it off, and you got to be fast with it. But anyways, to talk more about Messmaker, you know, he was at Vandergrift, which is like a really, really, really good, you know, West Austin school where like, you know, it's pretty well off kids that have private quarterback tutors and stuff like that. So him never starting as the varsity quarterback, I guess, isn't all that surprising when you think like that's probably a top 0.1% for like quarterback development in like every high school in the nation.
Wow. Unbelievable. Yeah.
But, you know, I know Eric Morris has raved about his football IQ. I think maybe playing on the defensive side of the ball at safety, you know, taught him a little bit about coverages and stuff like that. But it's just really his arm talent that's impressed me. You know, he can read the defense really well and all that, of course, but man, he can make some throws. Sideline throws, over the shoulder throws, you know, working the seams. He can really do it all. It's very, very impressive. And he's an athlete. You know, he can run a little bit. I had his yards per average pulled up here. What was it? 7.3 yards per rush. He's only taken 5 sacks. So he's a very special kid. Very special.
Wow. Really, really incredible stuff from Drew. He's not the only lethal weapon, if you will, in UNT's backfield. They've also got
he's not the only lethal freshman that no one else was recruiting, dude.
Gosh.
Eric Morris is really good at this stuff, dude. Let's talk about Caleb Hawkins.
I just saw the meme of the lethal weapon what is it, DVD cover, but instead it's Drew Messamaker and Caleb Hawkins, and it says lethal freshman. Yeah, the running back room, dude. Caleb Hawkins is absolutely fantastic. Nearly 6.5 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns on the year so far. Right behind him, Mackenzie McGill, a sophomore, who's got nearly 5 yards per carry and 5 touchdowns of his own. It's a really, really deep room, and you throw in what Drew's able to do whenever he's scrambling sometimes. And a lot of ground attack weapons from UNT.
McGill is a good back. He's solid for sure, but Caleb Hawkins is a special player, man. He's like 6'2", rock solid. He's got great balance. He'll drag defenders with him for 5 yards. He's a type of power back with speed that we don't really see at this level all that often. Incredible discovery of this player. His only other offers coming out of high school were Emporia State and Central Oklahoma. And this guy looks like an All-American. I mean, he looks like he'd be a Georgia running back. It's very, very impressive.
Man, I hate to derail the eval for UNT right now, but golly, I mean, we're hearing about quarterback development. We're hearing about talent identification. I mean, it just seems like UNT is doing a lot of the right things during their offseason and during their player development through Eric Morris's tenure that, I don't know, maybe we've been looking for, asking for, longing for from Jeff Traylor and his Roadrunner staff.
Well, I think the programs are different in where they evaluate and develop talent, right? I think UTSA does a better job in the trenches. Defensive line for UTSA has always been so strong. They've always been able to go 3 deep, and they've always had a solid handful of difference makers. UT is the opposite. Like, defensive line's always been a weak point for them. They've had some good players come through here and there for sure. Don't get me wrong, but it's not an area where they have had historical strengths there. So I think it's just different, right? Jeff Traylor's had 2 amazing quarterbacks throughout his tenure as well. So, you do have to give him some credit, but I think Morris is just really good at identifying guys that are explosive and, can run his system really, really well.
Okay. Yeah. Good explanation. Well, who else we got on the UNT offense that's pretty salty?
Yeah, Miles Coleman is our leading target. He's the guy they throw to the most often. Sure-handed route runner. But Wyatt Young and Cameron Dorner are the bigger play threats. Those are the guys that can stretch the field a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned Landon Sides earlier. Every time I've watched a game, he's impressed me with his ability to get open and, just read that zone coverage and figure out where to sit to be wide open. But he hasn't had a huge season. I think he's just one of those guys that, makes the big play when it's there. He's a guy that we've seen, have some success against UTSA in the past. But those are the main guys to look out for. They're not as deep, they're not as loaded with like skill position talent as we've seen some of these North Texas teams in the past. But Mr. Maker's so good, he just makes the whole thing work.
Yeah. And where his guys need it. Yeah, but I mean, it is a room that has a lot of guys in it, right? So he's got a few different targets that are sure-handed enough and consistent enough that he can cycle through. And so, yeah, I think there's depth there at wideout for UNT.
Yeah, but I mean, there have been seasons where they had like 5 receivers that could start for UTSA. And I don't know if it's quite that good this year.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, it has been a pretty star-studded room, a very busy room in years past. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the defense a little bit. A few years back, Western Kentucky did that thing where they went and got the offensive coordinator from I'm going to say an FCS school, maybe not perfect comparison here, but they went out, got the coordinator, and he brought his guys with them, and they did a whole reload of the defense. Essentially just lift and shift of a defensive coach, all the guys, bring the whole system in, and UNT did the defensive version of that. Whenever Casey Keeler left Sam Houston State to go to Temple, Skylar Cassidy's defensive coordinator chose to stay in the state of Texas. He is very intentional that he want to stay in Texas. And he goes and he plays for coaches for Eric Morris, rather. And he brings a ton of his guys with him as well. I lost track of which of these guys are from Sam Houston or not. I didn't get the list, but it's a pretty big number. And while they have not been like the most amazing defense in the country or anything like that, they've been a solid step forward to where they're no longer an embarrassment of a defense, which is what we have seen from Eric Morris's teams the last couple of years.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, Skylar Cassidy, man. Yeah, wow. So there's particularly a really nasty linebacking core here at UNT.
Yeah, Trey Fields is the main one for me. I mean, he was like all conference level player in Conference USA for Sam Houston, and he has played at that same level here in North Texas. Just really solid player. Ethan Woslowski is actually a guy that they retained from last year. He was a guy that I thought for sure would hit the portal because like that's what's happened to UNT for so many years is like they have that good player on the edge, whether they're a pass rusher, just outside the back or whatever. They've not really been able to hold on to those guys. But he's stuck around. He's been a good player for them. Shane Whittier as well has been really solid. Just a good group, and they've got a good secondary as well. Colin Lewis, a corner, is a good player. Evan Jackson, Quentin Hammonds as well. So they're pretty solid against the pass. They have struggled against the run because there's not a lot of standouts on the defensive line. And if I was watching that South Florida game, there were a lot of plays where just huge holes blew up. And as good as those linebackers are, if they've got a 320-pound offensive lineman running free at them, it's hard to make a play in that scenario. So I think that's one area where UTSA should have an edge, and hopefully we'll be able to get some big run plays going.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the quality of the UNT schedule and opponents. However, I think it's still fair to mention that they are the number one passing defense in the American Conference so far, only allowing 159 passing yards per game from their opponents. And I think a lot of it has to do with those names that you talk about, Jared. But they've got just a really good, I think, all around up front with their front seven. We talk about the linebackers. They're also really good up front with their defensive linemen. You got Kevian Huddleston, who's actually leading the team in sacks with 2.5. They've got 9 guys so far with sacks on the year. A lot of those guys are actually the top 3. Ethan Day and Zalian Scott, all up front on the defensive line for UNT. So they're getting in the backfield, they're making some things happen, and they've been able to disrupt, I think, other opponents.
It's kind of different compared to Temple and Rice, where both of those teams had 2 guys that were like the obvious pass rushing threats and like had crazy numbers and all of that.
Right.
UNT's, it's more distributed and
by committee.
And they use a lot more blitzes and stunts and stuff like that to try to confuse offensive lines and quarterbacks. So I think that's going to be the challenge for UTSA, just making sure that you're blocking the right guy, you got your eyes up, because they're going to bring pressure off the edge from corners and safeties as well. So we'll see how UTSA handles that. They've done a pretty good job, I think, so far this year picking it up. I have noticed the past couple of weeks there have been some missed blitz pickups from the running backs, so that's going to have to improve for sure.
Jared, UNT is favored by 5 points in this game. This game is on the road for UTSA. Lost our first conference matchup on the road in Philly. I don't know. What's your overall temperature going against a 5-win UNT team? UTSA is 500. Played their first good game of the year against Rice, but happened to be really, really, really good. Not just their best game of the year, but unbelievable game. How are you supposed to feel right now?
I mean, it all comes down to culture and momentum, right? Like, can UTSA keep up what they found against Rice and keep pushing that forward? And then on the flip side, can UNT rebound from, I don't know, one of the most disappointing performances they've had in recent memory, right? The first time you saw the stadium and, you kind of embarrassed yourself a little bit, give up 63 points. That's a big blow to them. And I think I was talking with Javi earlier, and it seems like this is the kind of week where USF could beat UNT twice because you embarrass them at home in front of a record crowd. It's in the back of the mind of the players and the staff, and they're not able to get up for UTSA and kind of flush that loss. These emotional losses can do that sometimes. We've seen it happen to UTSA as well. So I think that's a big question mark there, but I feel like the spread is accurate. That's almost exactly what I would have set it at, leading into this game. I don't think UTSA's pass defense is good enough to have me confident to pull the trigger, but I think it's going to be a really competitive game. It's going to be a fun one. On paper, this is a really, really good matchup. So, I think I'll take North Texas to win this one about 35-31.
Yeah, so I think Drew Messamaker is really, really phenomenal, and he's actually been playing better ball than Owen McCown, I think, by far so far in the year. And not just in the stat numbers, which, touchdown to interception and the total yardage and the completion percentage.
Go put the highlight reel
all those,
on.
All those are better. But if you just look at the intangible, Drew's just been playing better just in general, beyond just the stat sheet. So it's hard. It's really hard for me to take the Roadrunners in this game. I think UTSA does get up for UNT and they play really well. But I think this UNT team does bounce back emotionally from the letdown against USF. They also play some of their best football. I think you can be happy, but not satisfied with what you see against the Roadrunners, if that makes sense and if that's possible. But I think you're going to see a very competitive UTSA team that just cannot get it done. So it's going to be good, but not good enough. What does that actually mean in the grand scheme? I don't know. We'll have to talk about it after the game. But I think that UTSA does drop this one, Jared. I agree with you. I actually have it a little bit higher of a scoring output on this, but I think UNT covers 45-38 Mean Green in Denton.
I was really hoping you picked the Roadrunners. I was really hoping.
I was swayed to when you picked Mean Green, just so we could have some controversial takes and disagree each other on the score prediction, but it would not have reflected my true prediction in my heart.
As great as the Rice game was, we've just seen too much bad to mediocre play from this team to be able to flush that and say, yep, things are fixed. They're ready to roll, but they're definitely getting closer. They're getting there. And I wouldn't be surprised too if they lose this UNT game and then upset Tulane in 2 weeks. Coming off another bye at home. We'll cross that bridge when we get there for sure. John Storm was going to start getting linked to a lot of jobs, so there could be some off the field distractions as well.
Sure.
Yeah, so we'll see. That's looking ahead though. That's eating the cheese.
Yes, indeed, Jared. It is eating the cheese. We will have to see what happens first in Denton, Texas. Wow, man. It sucks. It sucks to not pick the Roadrunners, but can't be confident of them yet. I hope they prove you and I wrong, Jared. I hope they prove a lot of people wrong and continue the hot streak, or not continue it, but start a hot streak here and get rolling into conference play the way that they need to be. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one. ESPN Plus, Saturday, 2:30. For those of you making the trek to Denton, I admire you and respect you. I love making the road trip to Denton. I'm sad I'm not going to be there this year. However, we will have a deeper dive on the Mean Green and maybe talk about the greater ramifications of this UNT team and an Eric Morris who's been there for a few years and sort of what needs to happen, what is next for UNT with Sonoe Valente, longtime friend of the Alamo Audible podcast. He is from the Mean Green Show. If you're trying to just catch up on UNT and get to know this team, I would tell you to get on YouTube and look up the Mean Green Show and just listen to Sonoe, and you get caught up on him and know what to expect pretty well, even beyond our podcast. But he'll be on our Patreon later this week as a guest for our subscribers, so be sure to tune into that. We want to give a big shout out to our big money donors. That is Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Espericueta, and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan Nerdahl, our host of Around the Birdbath, Jacob Cavazos, former board president for the UTSA Alumni Association, John Nally, Rick Cortez of the Rowdy Road Grillers, Sumner McDaniel, Joe Rodriguez, UTSA grad at 1998, Russell Rincon, Brandy Dunnigan, realtor with the Social House Group, and Homefield Apparel, where you can save 15% on your first order with the code UTSA Wants Home Field. You can also get sweet game day gear from the Alamo Audible fan shop. Thank you very much. And we look forward to talking with you next week after hopefully UTSA gets one win above 500.